It wasn't an accident. I heard him say it. That thought hit me before the pain did, before the sirens, before the flashing lights, before I even opened my eyes. I heard him. Every word. And the worst part? I knew that voice. Have you ever had a moment where your entire reality just cracks? Where everything you thought was safe suddenly feels like a lie? That was me. My name is Maya Cullens. I'm 29, and 3 weeks ago, I almost died in what everyone keeps calling a car accident. That's the word they use, accident. But nothing about what happened to me feels accidental. I woke up in a hospital bed with broken ribs, a pounding headache, and a room full of machines reminding me I was still alive. The doctors kept saying I was lucky. My friend said I had a second chance. And then there was Daniel Reeves, my fiancé. 34, charming, successful, the man I was supposed to marry in less than a month. He never left my side, holding my hand, whispering how scared he was, telling me how much he loved me. If you saw him, you'd believe him. I almost did. But something didn't sit right. Because while everyone else focused on what happened after the crash, my mind was stuck on what happened before. Fragments, that's all I had. A voice, low, controlled, calm. Not panicked, not worried, calculated. At first, I told myself it was the trauma, the concussion, my brain trying to make sense of chaos. But then, little things started adding up. My phone? Missing. The police report? Vague. Daniel? Avoiding certain questions, like he was walking on a script. And the timing. The accident happened just hours after I confronted him about something I was never supposed to find. Money. A hidden account. Thousands of dollars gone. When I asked him about it, he smiled. Calm, reassuring, told me it was nothing. Just a misunderstanding, he said. Funny how misunderstandings don't usually end with someone almost dead. So I started watching him, listening, waiting. And then it happened. Late one night, I kept my eyes closed, pretending to sleep. Daniel thought I was out. I heard him step away from the bed. He lowered his voice. And then, I told you it was handled. She wasn't supposed to wake up. My heart stopped, not from fear, from recognition, because this time I knew exactly what I heard. And suddenly, one question became impossible to ignore. What if the man I was about to marry is the reason I almost died? Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if the person you trust most is the one who tried to kill you? I didn't want to believe it. Even after hearing those words, I lay there in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling, trying to force logic back into my world. Because how do you go from fiancé to suspect? How do you rewrite 3 years of love into something dangerous? But once the doubt creeps in, it doesn't leave. It grows. And suddenly, everything looks different. Daniel and I met 3 years ago at a corporate event. He was confident, attentive, the kind of man who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Within months, we were inseparable. Looking back now, maybe too inseparable. He handled everything. The bills, the planning, the investments. At the time, it felt like security. Now, it felt like control. I remembered the small things I used to ignore. The way he'd brush off questions about money. The way he'd change the subject if I asked for details. The way he insisted, "Don't worry about it, I've got everything covered." And I let him, because I trusted him. But trust can blind you. The day before the crash, that's when everything shifted. I found the account. Hidden, not linked to anything I knew about, and it wasn't empty. Thousands of dollars gone from our joint savings. transferred slowly, over months, like someone didn't want to be noticed. When I confronted Daniel, he didn't panic. That's what bothered me the most. He just smiled. Calm, steady, like he'd already rehearsed the moment. "It's complicated," he said. "I'll explain everything soon." Soon never came. Instead, I ended up in a hospital bed. That's when I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I called the only person I trusted, Lena Brooks, my best friend. 31, blunt, observant, the one person who never fell for Daniel's charm. When she walked into my hospital room, I didn't hold back. I told her everything. The voice, the missing money, the strange behavior. She didn't hesitate, not even for a second. "Maya, this wasn't an accident." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. Too real. Then Lena told me something I wasn't prepared for. The night of the crash, Lena was near the hospital parking lot. She saw Daniel. Not rushing, not panicking. Talking. To a man she didn't recognize. And the way they were standing? Close. Familiar. Like this wasn't their first conversation. I felt my chest tighten. "Who was he?" I asked. Lena hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I didn't want to hear. "I didn't know at first," she said slowly. "But then I saw him again." A pause.
"He works for a towing company." My stomach dropped. "The same one listed in your accident report." And just like that, this wasn't suspicion anymore. It was a pattern. The crash wasn't random. It was arranged. That thought didn't come all at once. It built slowly, piece by piece, like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. But once Lena said it out loud, we couldn't unsee it. So we started digging. Quietly, carefully. Because if we were right, I wasn't just recovering from an accident. I was sitting in a hospital room with the man who caused it. Have you ever had to pretend everything is normal when you know it's not? That was my reality. Every time Daniel walked in with that soft smile, asking how I felt, brushing my hair back like nothing had happened, I had to fight the urge to pull away. Instead, I played along. Weak, confused, grateful. Exactly what he expected. Meanwhile, Lena did the one thing I couldn't. She went looking for answers. The accident report was our starting point. At first glance, it looked routine. Brake failure, loss of control, collision. Case closed. But the details, that's where things got strange. The towing company arrived unusually fast. Too fast. The driver who helped me out of the car, the same man Lena saw with Daniel. And the witness statements? Short, vague, almost identical in wording, like they'd been coordinated. Then something clicked in my memory, right before the crash. I wasn't speeding, I wasn't distracted. I remember pressing the brake pedal, and something felt off. Not completely gone, just wrong, like it had been tampered with. My heart started racing, because if that was true, then this wasn't just a setup. It was an attempt. And suddenly, the stakes changed. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival. I realized something else, too. Daniel thought I didn't remember. That was my advantage. So I leaned into it, smiled when he walked in, let him hold my hand, even thanked him for being there. Every word felt like a lie sitting on my tongue. But I needed him to feel safe. Because safe people make mistakes. And he did. One afternoon, while sitting beside me, he asked casually, "You don't remember anything before the crash, right?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need anything?" Just that. I forced a small, confused smile. "Not really," I said. For a split second, his shoulders relaxed. And that told me everything. Later that night, Lena came back with something bigger, way bigger.
She had accessed a message thread between Daniel and the towing company worker. My hands were shaking as she handed me the phone. One message stood out. Short, cold, precise. Make sure it looks like brake failure. I felt the air leave my lungs. Proof. Actual proof. This wasn't in my head. This was real. But before I could even process it, I felt something shift in the room. A presence. I looked up slowly, and there he was, standing in the doorway, watching us, silent. And this time, Daniel wasn't pretending anymore. He wasn't surprised. He was prepared. Daniel stepped into the room slowly, deliberately, locking the door behind him. The air felt heavier instantly, thick with tension. Every instinct in me screamed to react, but I couldn't. I had to stay calm. I had to survive. "You've been asking a lot of questions," he said, his voice low, measured, almost casual. But there was an edge, danger lurking beneath the surface. I forced a weak smile, pretended to be still the confused, fragile woman he thought I was. "I just don't remember much," I murmured, letting my tone carry uncertainty. Daniel's eyes narrowed, scanning the room as if he was assessing a threat. He didn't touch me, not yet, but the weight of his presence was suffocating. "You know, things got out of control. Pressure, stress, money issues." He glanced at my hand, still bandaged, then back to me. "You weren't supposed to hear anything. You weren't supposed to wake up." Each word hit me like ice water. My mind raced, piecing together months of hidden accounts, the sudden transfers, and now this confession. He was admitting it, carefully, subtly, testing my reaction. I stayed silent. Every muscle in my body was tense. One wrong move and it could end badly. I focused on breathing, controlling the panic clawing at my chest. Meanwhile, outside the room, I knew Lena had contacted the police. She understood the danger, understood that Daniel wasn't someone who would stop once he thought he was in control. The officers were on their way. Time was the only thing on my side. Daniel stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You should have just let it go, Maya. Everything would have been easier." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His calmness was terrifying. Then, footsteps, voices, the sound of authority breaking through the tension. Daniel froze. His eyes flicked toward the door. I didn't have to see his face to know what he was thinking. Panic, loss of control, exposure. A loud, commanding voice echoed, "Police, open up." Daniel's calculated composure faltered. He turned back to me, his expression shifting from control to shock, realizing that the game he thought he was winning was over. In that moment, relief, fear, and adrenaline collided inside me. I understood everything, what he had planned, why he had lied, and how close I had come to losing everything. And as the footsteps drew closer, I knew the moment I had waited for had finally arrived. Daniel's plan was unraveling. The officers would be here any second. And I was still alive. The door burst open and the police flooded into the room. Daniel's face twisted from shock to desperation, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. Every lie, every manipulation, every hidden transaction came crashing down around him. The recorded conversation, the financial records, the messages coordinating the accident, and the towing company worker already identified and ready to be taken in. It all added up. It was clear now. Daniel had orchestrated the crash. It was never an accident. It was a plan, meticulously crafted to look like a tragic mishap, while he prepared to benefit financially. I watched as they cuffed him, trying to speak, to manipulate, to justify, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Months of fear, confusion, and betrayal were finally being validated. Justice was happening. Daniel's carefully constructed facade had collapsed. Emotions surged through me, a mix of relief, shock, and an almost surreal sense of freedom. I had survived more than a crash. I had survived a calculated attempt on my life by someone I loved and trusted. I cried, not because of fear, but because of release. It was over. The aftermath was complicated, but clear. Daniel was charged with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The towing company worker was arrested as an accomplice. Our finances, though partially drained, were traced and partially recovered. Friends, family, and colleagues who had been oblivious to the truth were shocked. Daniel's double life, hidden debts, and manipulations came to light. Lena stayed by my side throughout the investigation, a constant reminder that trust is precious and must be earned, not assumed. Months later, I stood outside the courthouse as the trial concluded. Daniel had been sentenced. The man I thought I knew was gone. The woman I had become, stronger, more cautious, more aware, stood in his place. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of tension lift. I had faced the darkness, uncovered the truth, and come out alive. I walked away from the courthouse not just as a survivor, but as someone changed, someone who had learned that love can blind, trust can be dangerous, and clarity can only come through truth. I left behind the life I had almost lost, the man I had almost married, and the fear that had almost consumed me. For the first time since the accident, I felt safe, strong, free, and I finally understood the truth in its entirety. I thought I survived an accident, but the truth is, I survived a plan.